Hey, what's going on YouTube? My name is JB. Welcome back or welcome to the All Things Mechanical YouTube channel. As some of you probably are aware, I got into 3D printing a couple of years ago, and as some of you can probably tell, there have been some landscape changes to my office down here in my basement. Most notably, I got myself a Bambu Lab X1 Carbon. I'm late to the party on the X1 Carbon. There are a lot of people out there, thousands of people actually out there that own these things. And there are plenty of unboxing videos and plenty of informational videos about them on YouTube, but needless to say, even though I'm late to the party, I'm still here. I still have one, and I want to just tell you guys very briefly what I think of it so far. When I first got into 3D printing, I started off with a Reality Ender 3 S1 Pro, which is a bed slinging machine. It's a Cartesian style 3D printer, which means your y-axis slides back and forth as the print is being printed. It moves in conjunction with your x-axis on the gantry, and that's what essentially grows your print as it prints layer by layer. The problem with that is that you're limited with that kind of technology because you can't go very fast. You start getting faster with a Cartesian style printer and you have a bunch more mass. As the print gets bigger and bigger, you're moving all that mass on the print bed back and forth, and it just limits your speed. That's just a physical limitation on that kind of printer. So why did I get this? Well, this is not a bed slinging machine. This is actually what is called a Core XY printer. And that essentially means that the only thing moving on this printer is the print head. Your z-axis only moves the print down as the print grows. So this thing can accelerate insanely quickly. 20,000 millimeters a second acceleration to be exact, according to the specs. And yeah, it's fast. The first time I saw this thing really get going, I just printed out a Benchy, which is a little boat that you print as a test. It's kind of a little mini torture test for a 3D printer. And this thing spat that Benchy out in like 14 minutes. And it was going so fast that I thought something was wrong with my eyes. It literally makes you think you're watching it in fast forward. It doesn't look like you're looking at reality. It's kind of astounding. So speed is definitely one thing that really drew me to this printer. And the other thing that drew me to it is the fact that there are no modifications necessary when you get the X1 Carbon, which is kind of their top-of-the-line printer for right now. I'm sure they're going to announce their next-gen printers here in the next month or two, but for right now, this is the cream of the crop that they make. And it comes right from the factory with hardened extruder gears, a hardened nozzle, and it's fully enclosed, so you can print all your abrasive filaments, all your engineering-grade filaments, without worrying about things like your print warping, bed adhesion issues, layer adhesion issues. There's no drafts that can get to this thing as long as you have the lid on and everything is contained. So that's part of the reason that I like it. I have some ABS, I have some ASA, I have some carbon fiber reinforced nylons, things like that. So I like the idea of not having to spend a whole bunch of money on buying upgrade parts and different components like I had to do with my Ender. I can print that stuff right out of the box with this printer. No worries. It'll handle it just fine. Now, you get the step down, which I believe is the P1S or P1P. I think it's the P1P that's the enclosed version. You don't get the touch screen, you don't get the hardened nozzle, you don't get the hardened extruder gears. You can upgrade all that stuff very easily. And I'll hit on what I like about the Bambu ecosystem here in a little bit, but you don't need to spend the money on the X1 Carbon. I did it because of the sale. I figured, why not? I might as well just start right from the jump with the best one they have, so I don't have to mess with it. I've spent so much time tinkering with my Ender 3 S1 that I'm over that. I just want to set it up and go. And setting it up and going is exactly what I've been doing with this printer. As of today, right now, I haven't even had it for 3 weeks yet. I've only had this thing a couple weeks. And let me go into the settings here, device info. I already have 227 hours of print time on this printer. I printed that Benchy when I first got it and got it set up, and then I immediately launched into a 17-hour print to start printing the sections of this AMS riser that I printed for it. And it has been going nonstop pretty much ever since. I think this past weekend, not today, today's Saturday, this past weekend I gave it a day off. But I've had something going on this printer pretty much every day, at least one print a day, ever since I got it. And it is phenomenal. It really hasn't missed a beat. Now, there are a couple of things that bug me about it, and I'll go into those in a minute. But by and large, this has been excellent. So let's run down the list. What do I like about this thing? What do I dislike about this thing? I know I mentioned this already, but it cannot be overstated that this thing is fast. Like, really, really fast. Impressively fast. I think that when people get into 3D printing for the first time, what they envision in their head is probably what this printer can do. And then when they buy an Ender 3 or a Prusa Mark 3 or some other bed slinger that's relatively entry level, they're left going, just because it's not that fast. You can get really good prints off of both of those machines I just mentioned, but they're not nearly as fast as this machine. This is in a whole different category. Core XY technology is absolutely insane. Now, there's those fancy new Delta printers and everything that can go even faster than this, but by and large, this will do everything that I need and then some. I haven't even scratched the surface of what it's capable of yet. I've just been printing other people's stuff. So yeah, it's fast. The next thing that really needs to be mentioned about this printer is that everything is automated. If you've owned a bed slinger like a Prusa Mark 3 or an Ender 3 or something with a little hand wheels underneath each corner of the bed that you have to adjust to try to get it level, and then you have to put a piece of paper under your nozzle to adjust your Z offset, or in the case of my Ender 3 S1 Pro with the Sonic Pad, if you want to do resonance testing, you need to attach a sensor, plug it into the Sonic Pad, attach it to the print head, then move it down to the bed and then run another set of tests. You don't have to do any of that with this. Literally everything is automated, and it does it before each and every print. The touch probe is actually the nozzle on this machine. It will actually do a bed mesh before every single print. It will do a mini version of its vibration and resonance testing before every print. It sets the Z offset for you automatically using a combination of the LiDAR sensor, the onboard camera, and the touch probe / nozzle. It does everything for you. That is a real breath of fresh air coming from dealing with my Ender 3. Again, the Ender's not a bad machine. It's just antiquated technology compared to this. And I love the fact that I don't have to mess with it anymore. Another thing I love about this machine, and I know this sounds almost snobbish, but I love the touchscreen. I know it's not a huge selling point. Do you need the touchscreen to effectively print with this thing? No, you can go get the P1P or the P1S and get the, detachable car stereo faceplate looking user interface. But I tell you what, having all the information that the touchscreen provides right there at your fingertips is very, very nice. The resolution's fantastic. You can adjust your AMS settings. You can look at all the printer's functions. You can look at how much time you have on the printer. Everything is right there at your fingertips. And it really sets the X1 Carbon apart from the other printers in the A series and P series lineup. Next are the build plates. I really like what Bambu has done with the build plates. Now, when these were first released, there wasn't a whole lot of aftermarket support yet, but Bambu, actually, if you buy the Bambu branded build plates, they actually come with these little QR codes on the front of them. So no matter which side you have, facing up, the print head will actually come over and that downward facing camera will scan that QR code for you, and it will compare it to the settings that you have in your slicer. And if you've got the wrong build plate in there, it's going to tell you. If your slicer settings were for a textured PEI plate, but you have the smooth plate in there, it's going to alert you. Now, it's not going to make you cancel the print or anything. It's just going to say, hey, you got the wrong build plate in here compared to what you have your slicer settings set for. Do you want to proceed? It'll let you bypass that and keep going, but it's really nice, and I've done this several times, where I forget to change the build plate style in the slicer settings and send the file over to the printer. And I'm glad that it told me that I had the wrong build plate in there, because maybe I didn't want a textured finish. Maybe I wanted to have my smooth plate in there. Very easy fix. Flip it over or swap out the plate, good to go. So I really, really like what Bambu's done with that. There are plenty of other aftermarket options now as well. Some of them even come with little QR code stickers, so you can kind of trick the software into whatever you want it to believe. So there are options out there if you don't want to pay for the Bambu stuff. All in all, though, I think it's a really solid setup. Now, next thing I really, really love about this printer is the automatic material system, or AMS. I know there are a lot of folks out there who think that they don't need the AMS. They think that all you need to use it for is like multicolored prints or that kind of thing. I don't do multicolored prints very often. There are a few that I've made that are kind of neat looking, but by and large, the reason I love the AMS is for this. What's so special about empty spools? Well, I'll tell you what. All three of these are the same filament. all three of them got run through the AMS, and I didn't have to worry about the filament running out. You can set the auto refill option in the AMS, and as long as you have the AMS set for the same type of filament, once one spool runs out, it'll cycle to the next one automatically. You don't have to worry about babysitting your printer anymore and wondering whether or not you're going to have enough filament for a print that you're running. It doesn't matter if you over or underestimate the amount of filament that you need. If it runs out, as long as you have it loaded with the same type of filament, it's going to swap to the next one. And it allows you to be a lot more economical with your filament. You don't have to worry about this kind of thing. We only have, a few feet of filament left on a single spool. Now, this is one of the reusable spools that came with the printer. These are really neat. You can buy refills from Bambu. Your filament, your spool comes apart. You swap out the new filament on these cardboard tubes, put it back together, lock it in place. You can refill these spools. They're completely reusable. So even if you don't think you're going to use the AMS for multicolor filaments or whatever, I would still recommend that if you're going to buy a printer like this, get the AMS with it, because it allows you to be so much more economical with your filament. And to me, saving money is good. So last thing I think it's worth mentioning is the whole Bambu ecosystem. Now, I know that most people don't like the whole walled garden approach that Bambu has taken, but coming from the Creality system, which really kind of leaves you hanging high and dry. You pick your own slicer. There's really no integrated anything with that. It's all open source. I really like the fact that the slicer integrates with the printer, which integrates with MakerWorld.com, which integrates to the Bambu Handy app. Everything is seamlessly linked together. I appreciate that. The only thing that I can really equate this to is that, I'm an Android user, but I really feel like Bambu Lab is kind of like the Apple of the 3D printing world. Everything just kind of links up and works. There's really no skill involved to it. All you need to do is download the right software and go. Go to MakerWorld.com. Download the file you want to print. You can import it directly into the slicer. Pull up the slicer, and there's even a tab right in the slicer that pulls up the build information from MakerWorld.com. So you can have all your settings and everything right at your fingertips. So if there's something you need to tweak for that specific file, it's all right there. I think it's very, very well integrated, and I appreciate that very much. I haven't really hit any roadblocks with the whole walled garden thing that Bambu's got going on. Maybe for certain users that is a bigger deal, but for me, it's kind of a non-issue. And I really appreciate the fact that everything communicates and integrates so well. All right, so I've kind of waxed poetic about this thing so far. What don't I like about it? Well, there are a few things, and some of these are bigger deals than others. Some of it's just me nitpicking, looking for stuff to say in this video. But I do need to cover a few things that I think are downfalls of this particular printer. First being speed. Yes, I know, this thing is insanely fast, and it does everything for you. All those pre-print processes are automated. With all of that being said, it takes a long time to actually get printing once you hit the print button. All of those processes take time. On average, this thing, if it's stone cold and I haven't printed anything with it and it sat down here in my basement overnight, for it to get up to temperature and run through all of those pre-print tests that it does, it takes 7 to 10 minutes before a single bit of filament starts getting laid down. So you need to account for that. The automated stuff is fantastic, and it's definitely worthwhile to allow it to run through all those processes to make sure you get the best possible quality in your prints, but it does take extra time. Now, there are ways that you can disable some of those pre-print checks and whatnot to save a few minutes if you want to, but why? There's really no reason to do that because, the printer is good on its own, but having all those backups there just ensures that you get good bed adhesion, good layer adhesion, and the best possible print for all the time that you're investing in printing stuff with this thing. So if you've got a 17-hour print going, saving 5 minutes off the front doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. So I'd say leave those settings enabled, let it do its thing, and you'll end up with the best possible outcome in the end. Just be prepared and expect that it's going to take a little bit of extra time. All right, number 2, the infamous poop chute. Yes, this printer farts out a lot of waste filament. That's just kind of how it's set up. That's part of the reason it works so well. But you need to be aware of the fact that if you don't have anything behind the printer to catch all of that waste, you're going to have a pile of it sitting back there. Case in point. Now, there's no provision from Bambu that comes with the printer that catches that. So you either need to print out something that will catch it, which I actually have sitting here, which I'll cover in another video. There's some very clever solutions out there for catching the waste from this printer, but there's nothing that is included from Bambu, and it does come out of the back of the printer, which is a little bit inconvenient, which means you need to have something either sitting behind the printer or that wraps around the printer so that you can see when it's full. In my particular instance, I chose a wraparound design and I printed it myself, but there are plenty of other options out there. You can even stick a small waste container back there, like a trash bin or whatever if you want, or have a gap behind your desk and just let it fall into a trash can under your desk if you want to. That's also an option. Now, does it waste a lot of filament doing that? It adds up over time for sure. Is it a big deal, and is it going to cause your prints to run out of filament or something? Probably not, unless you have a ton of color changes or a huge print that's going to take a lot of filament. Most likely you'll be all right. But it is something that you need to account for. Now, luckily, in this particular case, if you're using Bambu Slicer, it kind of itemizes everything that the printer is going to use based on how it's configured once you slice the file. So it'll tell you how much filament it's going to purge, how much it's going to use for the print, and even what filament is going where and how much of it is going to, your outer walls, your infill, your purge, that kind of thing. It kind of breaks all that down for you so you can plan accordingly before you start the print. But it is something to be aware of. It does purge a lot of filament. Third thing you need to be aware of, it's not exactly quiet. My Ender 3, even with aftermarket fans on it, was pretty quiet, just because it didn't move that fast. This thing is very fast. Now, firmware updates have made the motors much, much quieter over the last 6 months or so. I haven't had any issues with the motors being too loud, but this thing has 3 different onboard fans built into it. You have your fan built into the nozzle for cooling your filament as it's extruded, you have your part cooling fan built into the side of the chamber, and you have your exhaust filtration fan at the back of the chamber. So with all of those running, it can get very, very noisy. That on top of the motor noise, I work down here. My laptops for work are sitting right in front of me right now. I have discovered that I really cannot have this thing printing during work hours, because if I get pulled into a last second meeting or if I have to present something, I can't have this thing going next to me because that noise can get picked up on my microphone. Not ideal. So yes, it's fast, but that speed does come with a trade-off, and that trade-off is volume. It is not super loud by any stretch, but it's definitely loud enough to cause a distraction if you're in a working environment. So I've basically relegated it to printing after work hours or overnight. Number 4, and this one is becoming more and more of an issue as I put more time on it, but it's the nozzle wiper. Now, this thing is light years ahead of all the other printers out there because it actually has a nozzle wiping feature and a dedicated wiper in the back of the printer that will wipe the nozzle clean for you after it purges or after it starts or finishes a print or after it changes color. But the problem is the stock wiper design, well, there's really no way to say it. It kind of sucks. It's just a rod, basically, with some PTFE tubing slid over it with a screw that holds that PTFE tubing on. And the nozzle moves back and forth very rapidly over that PTFE tubing, and it kind of slides back and forth. And over time, that tubing can wear out. I haven't worn mine out yet, but I have made some very, very large prints on this thing. The problem that I've run into is that over the course of a long print, no matter what kind of printer you have, little bits of filament are going to start building up on the outside surface of the cone of the nozzle. Just because that's how 3D printing works. You're extruding melted plastic. In order to get good layer adhesion, you kind of have to squish that filament together, and over time, especially printing with PLA, it just builds up on the nozzle. There's really no other way to slice it. Once you start having that build up on the nozzle, rather than the wiper being able to cleanly knock that little string of filament off as it's coming out of the end of the nozzle tip, it just kind of goes whoop and pushes it up onto the side of the nozzle. And that gets worse and worse over time because eventually, as it's purging, rather than knocking off the end of that purge blob, it will actually stick to the nozzle and then as it comes back out over the print bed, it will yank that big blob of filament up out of the trash chute, and it falls off of the nozzle onto your print surface. I have not had that cause any issues with my prints yet, but it's come close a couple of times. Now, I have a solution for that. There are some 3D printed options available on Maker World and Printables and things like that that use the much better wiper system from the A1 and A1 Mini, which is this corrugated silicone pad. This will actually, I'll install this in my upgrade video, but that is supposed to replace the stock PTFE wiper with a much better system that will actually allow that nozzle to get right down in between those corrugations and literally scrape all of that filament off the end of the nozzle. So that should be a much better solution for actually wiping the nozzle clear. I hope that in future iterations of these printers, Bambu Lab does away with the PTFE tubing variation of their nozzle wiper and incorporates that silicone option from the A1 series. Next thing that leaves a little bit to be desired is lighting. You have one light bar inside this printer, right here, and that's it. It shoots from one direction, it's very dim, and as you can see, this is tinted glass on the front and on the top. And for folks like me who are running the AMS and an AMS riser, that is blocking even more ambient light from getting into the print chamber, so that's essentially useless. With the tinted glass, you can barely see in there. And I really think that they could do a better job of putting either more or a different light source in there. But there are plenty of aftermarket options. Now, I have actually printed, I'm sitting back here, this AMS riser that I have. Again, more detail on that in a future video. But there are actually files included where you can print TPU gaskets. And I've printed TPU gaskets so the glass can sit that in there and seal if you need to have it in closed chamber. But these are different TPU gaskets that mimic the same orientation as the ones that come with the files for the riser, but they also have this provision for an SMD LED strip right here. So I have some LEDs right here, and I am waiting on my BL LED controller from Germany, and which will allow me to control the lights via the touchscreen without actually tapping into anything in the circuitry in here. It's all done wirelessly through the software that comes with the controller. So that will actually allow this thing to have the LEDs pointing straight down rather than to the sides like a lot of the other options are, and should provide a much better solution for lighting in this thing, as well as some cool other features that I'll get into in that other video. But there are aftermarket options out there, but the lighting kind of sucks from the factory, so just keep that in mind. The last thing that I've heard people mention is the Bambu Cloud server. Yeah, every print that you send to this printer goes from the slicer up into the sky, into the Bambu Cloud service, and then gets downloaded onto the printer from the cloud server. So basically all the prints that you make on this thing are going to China and then coming back to the printer. It happens very quickly. It only takes a couple of seconds to actually get all of that information back to the printer and have the print start. But there are a lot of folks out there who have a problem with sending their files to a Chinese server. I get it. I understand that, and that would be a much bigger issue to me if I were printing proprietary stuff. If I were a business owner or someone who was designing proprietary parts, things like that, I wouldn't want my information going to a Chinese server that is probably not all that secure. But as it is right now, I print everything off of, Maker World or Printables or Thingiverse or what have you. It's all stuff that's available in public domain. So not really a huge issue for me. That could change though. I am currently trying to learn Fusion 360 so I can design some of my own stuff. Maybe eventually I won't want those things going out there into the ether. Now, there is what is called LAN mode. You can go into the settings on the printer and tell it to print just from your wireless network. The problem is when you disconnect these printers from the Bambu Cloud service, you lose access to the Bambu Handy app, you lose a lot of the functionality. And on the P-Series printer, you also lose access to monitor the print via the built-in webcam. Now, my understanding is the X1 Carbon, through a firmware update a couple months ago, now you can actually still monitor your prints as they are printing, even in LAN mode, just with the X1 Carbon. I don't think that's available yet for the P-Series printers. Why, I don't know. I would imagine that it has something to do with the technology that goes into the onboard webcam. The X1 has a 1080p camera and much better drivers and software running it versus the 720p webcam on the P series printers, and very, very little software on board running it because you don't have the touchscreen. Touchscreen has a little onboard hard drive, so you can have a little bit more oomph behind it to run better software for the camera. I think that that might be a technical limitation as to why the 720p webcam on the P series printers can't maintain that remote functionality when it's in land mode. I don't know that for sure. I'm trying to be devil's advocate here. I could be completely out to lunch on that, and Bambu might have just said, nope, P series users don't get it. I have no idea. But that is something to consider. If you are a business owner or if you are running a print farm and you have proprietary, aerospace stuff that you're modeling and doing different iterations of, trying to do prototyping and whatnot, you might want to run your printer in land mode to make sure that those files aren't getting sent over to the Bambu cloud server. I don't know how secure their servers are. It's China. You can pretty much guarantee that anything you send over there is going to become public domain eventually. That's just kind of how China is. So, again, not a big deal to me. It might be a bigger deal to you. Food for thought. Just keep that in mind. The last thing I want to touch on that I don't really care for has to do with maintenance on this printer. I haven't touched it yet. It came greased from the factory. Everything has been working fine so far. But the Bambu Lab instructions for maintenance are very vague. Very, very, very vague, okay? They say things like, we recommend that you do such and such procedure every month or every 3 months. Or if you're printing a lot of ABS or ASA, increase your maintenance on this, blah, blah, blah. They use time references like 1 month, 3 months, things like that. That can vary so much depending on the user. As someone who worked in a maintenance environment, an equipment maintenance environment for 5 straight years before my current job, on top of being in the military, working in a machine shop where you have to maintain all your equipment daily, that blows my mind. On a $1,500 printer, that really is surprising to me. You have a built-in hour meter right here, Bambu. Do better. Outline your maintenance procedures according to hours, time on the machine, not some arbitrary time frame like a month. I've put 227 hours on this machine in the last 2 weeks. That's more time than some people will put on their printers in 6 months. It's completely up to the person. It's up to the individual end user. Now, I don't think I'm due for any maintenance yet, but I'm going to do it. In my next video, I'm going to do some maintenance, and I'm also going to highlight the mods that I'm doing to this thing and go into more detail on why I'm doing those modifications. Now, everything I'm doing as far as modifications goes is for lighting or for cosmetics or for functionality. I'm not messing with the print head at all. I'm not doing upgraded, BQ extruder gears or fans or anything. All that stuff works great. Everything that I'm adding to this is going to be for functional benefit outside of the actual print head. But I don't know what the maintenance requirements are for the amount of hours I have on this machine because Bambu hasn't made that clear. I don't think it needs maintenance yet, but I don't know. I would rather do more maintenance than less. Grease is a lot cheaper than replacing, carbon rods and Z-axis lead screws and all that kind of stuff. So I wish that Bambu would be better about narrowing that kind of stuff down based on hours. You have an hour meter on the machine right there on the screen. Use it. Let people know when they are supposed to do maintenance based on the time on the actual machine, not arbitrary time frame windows. Doesn't make any sense. All right, so that's everything I know so far about my Bambu Lab X1 Carbon. Are there a few little nitpicks? Yeah, of course there are. I can always find something to complain about, but for the most part, I absolutely love this thing. It is a phenomenal printer. This is about as close, in my opinion, as close as you can get to a prosumer level printer for the price. Now, I have no idea what Bambu Lab is about to crank out coming up in 2025. They say that there are big things on the horizon. I know they're going to announce their second gen printers here relatively soon. I have no idea what kind of new technology they're going to incorporate into them. But one thing I do know about Bambu Lab, based on all the research I've done, is that they don't do anything halfway. If they're going to release a new product, they're going to make it right. I think they've learned from some of their mistakes on these printers, and I think that they know what they need to do in order to integrate the technology and make it workable for everyday consumers. So I'm excited to see what they come out with, but for right now, this is more than adequate more than adequate to do everything I want to do with it. And coming from an Ender 3S1, this thing is an absolute lightning bolt. So I love it. I think it's a fantastic printer. I'm looking forward to putting even more time on it, and I will have another video coming out relatively soon about all the different things I'm going to do to make this printer better and do some maintenance on it. So for right now, thank you very much for watching. You guys be safe, have fun, have a great weekend, and we'll catch you on the next one. See ya.